Hello, friends. It's Jessica from Three Rivers Homestead, and I had quite the weekend I want to share with you. My house was torn up, as you can see. We decided to start moving things down into the cellar because I was getting a little overwhelmed with just all of the canning jars and food preservation materials that were hanging out upstairs. So I'm going to show you more of that at the end of the video. But first, I needed to finish processing these bushels of apples that were sitting in the kitchen, also giving me anxiety. So, what I decided to do was cook some of them down. I just did a small batch, cooked them down for a little bit, and then went ahead and hit them with this immersion blender. And then I had them on the stove all day long while I was downstairs, kind of organizing canning jars and things. And then it cooked down until it was this thick here. I actually put it in the fridge overnight because I didn't have time to get to it. And then the next day I woke up and added some sugar here. We're just doing 1 cup of sugar, and I stirred it around, and then we could can it up the next day. That was great that I didn't have to get to it that night because I was exhausted. Just adding a little bit of cinnamon to this peach butter, and we're going to get that all stirred up, and we're going to can this. And this is going to go into half-pint jars and into the water bath canner for 10 minutes. So was my plan for a lot of those peaches. As I said, they were starting to feel overwhelming with all of the other produce that I have coming in from the garden right now. The purchase of these peaches, the timing wasn't perfect, but I don't get to pick when they come. We just kind of get a call from the lady that we order fruit from when they're ready, and I just have to make the time for it. So this was a really easy way to get some of them in jars, and I will do plenty of batches of this, just wiping those rims. And then we're going to get our lids on. These are 4 jars canning lids, my absolute favorite lids. If you would like a discount on your lids, check out the link in the video description. As I said, these will go into the water bath canner for 10 minutes, and then we'll have a little bit of peach butter. I'm hoping to get at least 2 more batches of these done. These silly little children here, they eat a lot of toast and jam, toast and fruit butters and things like that. Since we can't have butter in our house, this is what we put on our bread. In my last video, I showed you the peach salsa. That was my first priority in canning peaches. I also did some peach pit jelly and some other peach products. My second priority, though, in canning up these peaches was to make peach pie filling. Peach pie is several of my children's favorite pie, and so I always prioritize this whenever I purchase bulk peaches. So the first thing I'm doing here is just slicing these up and getting my jars filled with the slices. A lot of people comment on me leaving the skins on my fruit. This is just the way I've always done it. I am trying to get a lot of fruit in jars, and so this is more efficient for me, and none of my family members complain about having the peels on their fruit. They're used to that texture, and honestly, I think it tastes great. So that is just what we do. So now we need to make our pie filling. I use the same pie filling recipe for all of my fruit. So this is 9.5 cups water. And then to that, we're going to add 4.5 cups of sugar. To thicken it up, I'm going to add 1 cup of arrowroot powder. You could use whatever thickener you like. Some people prefer to use things like clear gel. Then to that, I'm adding lemon juice, about 1/4 a cup. I decided for this pie to add a little bit of vanilla extract and then just sprinkling in some cinnamon. And that is just my basic pie filling goo. And like I said, it works for pretty much all fruit. So we're getting that on the stove, thickening up. After it thickened, I can go ahead and just pour it over the fruit that's in my jars, just being really careful to make sure that I remove any pockets of air, any air bubbles that are hidden within the fruit. So you're going to want to really get in there with a chopstick or something and stir it around, and then continue to pour the goo filling over the top until it covers the fruit, leaving 1-inch headspace. But if you don't use that chopstick and really move that goo around in there, you'll end up with some headspace issues and a lack of filling in your pie. So after we got that all done, I had a little extra goo that I'm going to put in the fridge to make a fresh pie. And then peaches, it's really important. Wipe those rims. Peaches are the one thing that I've noticed I have the worst seal rates. I've said before that I've only ever lost one I had had one seal failure with these 4 jars canning lids before, and it was with sliced peaches. So for some reason, peaches are known to do that because they're kind of stringy, and those strings can get up under the lid. So make sure you wipe your rims. These processed in the water bath canner for 25 minutes. This is what they look like coming out of the canner, and we will definitely enjoy these this winter. The next plan for getting all of these peaches preserved is freeze drying. I am trying to preserve as much fruit through freeze drying as possible this year because my kids love it for snacks. And in the winter, when I don't want to go to the grocery store, having freeze dried or dehydrated fruit is the next best thing to having fresh fruit. And so we're going to fill up trays with as much as we can. These peaches actually do not take very long at all. They take, maybe 20 hours to freeze dry if you slice them like this very thinly. And that is actually pretty good for a hot kitchen this time of year. So getting a batch going, I've been doing about a batch a day of these freeze-dried peaches, and that's really helping me get through the bushels of fruit quickly. I had a little helper on this day who was very interested in loading up the freeze dryer. As you can see, we had to rearrange the kitchen a little bit. This is also very temporary until we can purchase some furniture that really suits this space well. But grateful for my helper there. A final way that I'm trying to get through these peaches quickly is freezing them. So I'm just chopping in slices like this for future pies and cobblers. And I also did some larger chunks like this for things like smoothies. And we'll just put those directly in the freezer raw, and we can take those out of the freezer and use them how we want to this winter for various purposes. But as you can see, there is some serious overwhelm in my kitchen right now. The perfect time to have this table set up because there is just a lot of work to be done, and I just need to chisel away and get as much done as I possibly can. So we're going to see some quick projects that I can do on this next day of food preservation. On top of what I had sitting out on that table, a good friend of mine started selling produce at the farmer's market this year, and I knew that she was growing green beans. And since the bunnies did a number on my bush beans, I asked her if she had a spare bushel to sell me, and I decided to purchase some so that I could can up some more. But when I got them home, I was like, what was I thinking? I do not need even more produce to be preserving right now. So I'm snapping this whole bushel of beans, and I'm going to preserve it in a couple ways just to try to get it out of the kitchen as quickly as possible. So the first batch I'm getting in jars to can, and in my last video I showed you detailed instructions on how I can my bush beans and pole beans. I basically just raw pack them in the jar with water, and then you pressure can them for 25 minutes, 4 quarts. It's really pretty simple. So out of this bushel, I got one more batch of quarts of green beans done. Then in the next, I decided to freeze just to get through them a little more quickly. So in order to freeze green beans, the best thing to do is to blanch them first. You blanch them by putting them in boiling water. I do it for 2 minutes. What this does is it just stops the enzyme action in the beans and helps preserve the texture and the nutrients better while they're in the freezer. So this, I really do find it is a necessary step with green beans in order to have a really good result. So after I boiled them for 2 minutes, I shocked them with cold water in my sink and then laid them out on a towel like this. And I want to try to get as much of the moisture out of the beans as possible. That any excess moisture that's sitting on those beans is going to make them get mushy in storage while they're in the freezer. So just trying to drain some of that excess water off of these, and then we're going to get them packaged up for the freezer. And as I said, it's not just about the texture, it is about nutrient retention. You're going to retain more of the nutrition in these beans if they're blanched versus if they're not. So another way I'm going to retain more nutrition is by vacuum sealing these. So I do have my food saver out. I'll link the one that I have in the description. And as you can see, you just cut a little baggie of the plastic wrapper, seal one end, stuff it full of the food, put it on the vacuum sealer, and it sucks out any of that excess air, and then it seals up the end, and it's all done for you. You can see when a roll of that plastic runs out, I'm going to show you in a second how I can reload it with a new roll, and you can just buy extra rolls wherever you purchased your vacuum sealer from. I was hesitant to start using a vacuum sealer for many years because it felt like wasteful to use all this plastic when I could can things up in glass that's reusable. But you can actually reuse these vacuum sealed bags when you cut them open. You can just cut the edge, clean it out, and refill them just like you would reuse a plastic freezer gallon bag or something like that. So I was happy that I finally gave in and purchased the vacuum sealer. I typically use it for vegetables and things like that where I find the texture and the retention of the nutrients is much more necessary. Now, I just threw some tomatoes that needed to be processed now. These were almost overripe. Threw them in some gallon freezer bags, and I'm just going to stick these in and so that I can get to them sometime later next week. I'm just too overwhelmed to make salsa right now, but I will use them next week. And finally, here is a batch of those freeze-dried peaches that came out of the freeze dryer. Gonna get these in Mylar and get them down in the cellar. I want to take you guys downstairs and show you how I've set up the cellar. This is very temporary. We're going to be changing a lot as we get used to using the space down there. But I know some of you were asking about it, so I'm going to take you down and give you a little tour here in a minute. In Sunday's video, I'll have some more exciting canning projects that are a little more in-depth, but this week the name of the game was just rush to get things preserved because I am overwhelmed with what is happening, what is coming out of the garden, and what I have on the table to deal with. So just getting things in bags and in the freezer was a good idea. Okay guys, I'm coming to you from my new food storage area in the cellar. We were hard at work over the weekend and we did get a little bit accomplished down here. It's definitely far from done. This is a work in progress, but I'm really excited to have the extra space. It's nice and cool down here, much cooler than the kitchen. I've been canning for the last 2 hours and it is hot upstairs, but it feels great down here and the humidity is at a great level. We've been kind of monitoring it. Just to make sure, you know, we are running a dehumidifier right now. We're trying to see if that's necessary, if we need to have a fan going, you know, just what's going on down here. But so far it's looking great. And I moved the shelving that we had in the kitchen down here and we just kind of set up. We're using what we have for now. Eventually the long-term plan would be to kind of build shelving to fit the space a little more perfectly. But we're using what we have until we can get to that project. It's probably going to be a while. Let me kind of show you what we're working with down here. We'll start over here in this corner. I got these containers. I had originally seen these on the Texas Boys channel probably 2 or 3 years ago. Texas Mom had set up her pantry with these and I really liked it. Knew if we ever had a food storage area, these were the way that I wanted to go. And so we have 6 of them here. I have, I think, 2 more in storage that I have yet to fill, but they're mostly with dried goods, and I've heard that they can hold the weight and be stacked as long as they're not too heavy. So we're just doing things like, let's see what's in here. This one just has like pasta in it. Anything that's down here that's in cardboard or plastic needs to be protected from potential mice. This is a really old farmhouse, and so you just never know. We have traps set and things, but this gives a double layer of protection having them in a container like this. So this will all be dried goods, things like crackers and chips and pasta, coffee, whatever we have like that needs to go in containers like this. And then over here we have a canning section. I haven't quite organized everything yet. We're going to wait till canning season is over and then I'll give you a full tour, but just some jars here. Last time I showed you this space, I mentioned that this will eventually back here be our cold room. We will put a door in here and we'll insulate these walls and put a ceiling up with a light. In this area, let me see if I can turn on, there we go. I have to turn on my light. This area is where the old coal chute is, and we will eventually, you know, have a ceiling in here, but then the pipe for the airflow to the cold room will go up out of the old coal chute. But for now, this space is just sitting here empty, but that will be where we'll store our root vegetables, bushels of apples, you know, squash, everything like that will eventually go in that space there. These totes right here are what are currently holding some of my freeze-dried food that's in Mylar. Mice can chew through Mylar. Mice can also chew through this plastic, and I feel like we'll be down here often enough to notice if anything like that were beginning to happen. But I don't know. I'm kind of praying about that. I may get some metal barrels to move this stuff to eventually, but this is just some of our freeze-dried stuff. We have like freeze-dried fruit. I see peaches and pineapple. I'm about to add more peaches that we just did today. And then this is mostly vegetables, I think. Down here are eggs. And then these are like full meals and things. We just keep those down here. Over here we have things like homemade vinegars and honeys, more freeze-dried stuff, just more canning. Empty canning jars, and then a little more canning here. These are the freeze-dried stuff I just brought down that I need to get put away. But also I have some more dried goods in buckets that will eventually get down here. We have a lot more stuff from upstairs to bring down. Got our water glassed eggs, extra dried goods. This is, like I said, a work in progress. So at the end of the food preservation season, I will definitely do a full tour of the food storage area as well as the freezers, and kind of in doing that I could make my own inventory. There are some pros and cons to this situation. I really did like the convenience of having my food stored upstairs in the kitchen where I could see it every day and use it, and coming down here, I'm just going to have to be really intentional when I do my food planning every week on Sundays. I'll come down here, I'll shop for the things that we need, it'll go back upstairs, and I'm just going to have to plan really well and keep a good inventory so that things don't get forgotten and lost and not used. Because my system upstairs, I was really good about using the things we preserved every year and not letting anything go to waste. So hopefully when things are kind of out of sight and out of mind, that won't occur. We won't have food loss and things. So yeah, I'm going to take you along for the whole journey. I just know some of you had asked for updates, and I thought I would show you the work that we did this weekend. But now I need to get back up to the kitchen and finish canning. I'll show you some more projects in the video coming out on Sunday. Until then, I hope you have a blessed week. Bye, friends.